Welcome to Symplicity Conversations, the podcast where business, culture, and community come together to inspire and empower. I'm your host, Catherine Ripley. Each week, we'll explore meaningful conversations about how today's business landscape is shaped by innovation, relationships, and the people behind the progress. From actionable insights and stories from industry leaders to topics like customer experience, fostering strong business relationships, and the role of automation, we've got you covered. Whether you're an entrepreneur navigating growth, a leader focused on building lasting connections, or someone interested in how culture and community drive success, Symplicity Conversations is here to guide you. If you're ready to turn challenges into opportunities and make meaningful strides in your business and community, subscribe now and join the conversation. Get ready to simplify complexity and make an impact with Symplicity Conversations. Welcome to Symplicity Conversations, where we explore the intersection of business, leadership, and innovation. Today, I'm thrilled to be joined by Craig Diggs, an IT visionary leading the charge at Fresh Thyme Markets. Together, we'll dive into his journey, how he's transforming IT culture, and the exciting innovations reshaping the retail experience. But first, let's start with the Symplicity Insights. This is our quote of the day, where we share some insights and a nugget. Innovation is the ability to see change as an opportunity, not a threat, by Steve Jobs. And Craig, I know that we've talked about Steve Jobs in the past, so I thought this was a really appropriate quote for your podcast that you're doing with me. So be sure to subscribe to Symplicity Conversations and hear more from leaders driving change across industries. So Craig, welcome to the podcast. I'm so
Hey, Catherine, how you
excited.
doing?
I'm doing really great.
Good.
So you and I met a couple of years ago when you joined the firm at Fresh Thyme Markets. And
Yes.
so I'd love for you to tell us a little bit about your journey and how you got into IT. And then what led you to Fresh Thyme Markets?
Okay. Well, it's starting to become a long story. My beard is a little grayer than I would like it to be. So, no, I actually started life as an industrial engineer and went through school to do that and decided that my path was a little different and went back to school, got into technology and finished up school way back in the good old days, 2008, 2009, and started with a local utility that I grew up next to. And I actually was the outside plant manager. And I literally climbed water towers
Wow.
and antenna towers and ran fiber optic cables and did a lot of customer bonding and building up of basically an internet service providing company that we had there.
I call that time in the trenches, right? You
Yeah, it
really
was literally
learn.
time in the trenches, up in bucket trucks and all kinds of stuff. The stuff we do when we're young is
Right.
sometimes a little crazy. But
Exactly.
no, so I actually had a really phenomenal opportunity to go work for the Joplin School District.
Mm.
After the Joplin tornado came through, there was quite a bit of damage to the school district, and I had the opportunity to go in and help them rebuild their infrastructure. And I jumped all over it and went from there to working with a managed service provider, left the managed service provider industry and went to food manufacturing, working for Butterball, and kind of led their service providing, or I guess their service desk, if you will. I was their national IT manager, rebuilt their entire technology team and rebuilt their entire technology stack during the decade that I was with them. Had some really fun opportunities with that company, and then actually moved up to the Chicagoland area where I reside now and actually began working for a robotics company, kind of going back to some of my roots. We were doing robotics and we started a managed service provider underneath of that umbrella company, built that up. And then Steve Harper, who you and I both know,
Right, right.
kind of got in contact with me and was like, "Hey, I've got an opportunity over here at Fresh Thyme. Would you like to come this direction?" And I'm like, "Yeah, let's do it." So really came on board, and the last couple of years with Fresh Thyme have been absolutely phenomenal.
Uh,
This is by far one of the best teams that I've had the opportunity to work with. They are just a group of really honestly hardworking,
mhm.
brilliant people. And every single day we're, I was commenting earlier, I'm on Teams chats constantly. And it's just a good-hearted, well-functioning team. We're doing a lot of really cool stuff here. So
That's cool. I can definitely say I've worked with Fresh Thyme for goodness, I think it's been about 7 years now. Maybe, yeah, 7 years. I've seen when you came into the organization, and I've literally seen you flourish. The first month when we talked, you said to me, "I'm gonna make an impact. I'm gonna revolutionize things." And it's really cool to see some of the things that you're getting into. When you think about one of the things that I hope listeners hear from, a director of IT side of things is it's difficult in technology to pick the right vendor, pick the right products,
yep,
because by the time you actually go through demos and figuring out, the design of it, and then you implement it, it can be a year down the road and technologies change pretty quickly. So I'd love for you to share for listeners just some of the challenges you go through as you stepped into this role and how did you tackle them? What kind of tools did you pull out of your tool belt from your experience?
yeah. So when I was interviewing for the job, before I even became part of this team, the leadership group here, you know, said, we're hoping that there's going to be some change that takes place. Um, and it wasn't from a team perspective, from the IT division itself. It was an ownership and a partnership elevation that needed to happen. Fresh Time is an organization that was developed very quickly.
Mhm.
And it was built very well with the partnerships that they had from an operations perspective and a development perspective of the business. It's a very well run, very well built organization. When you stand up a business of this size as quickly as needed to be done, you lean on your partnerships. And some of those partnerships over time had begun to wane. Technology wasn't being kept up to the highest and best.
Mhm.
And so when I came on board, the technology department had some very hard challenges in front of it. We had systems that were outdated, contracts that were outdated. I think you
Mhm.
very well remember some of the contracts that
I
we had to
do.
work through.
I do.
And the technology just needed a revitalization.
Mhm.
And so we dug in. And when I was offered the opportunity to come on board, I had a very straight conversation with our leadership team to say, we're going to move and we have to. And if we don't, we're going to be left in the dust. And so, we talk a lot in our business around difficult conversations. And we started having a lot of difficult conversations with our partnerships. And we fortunately had very good partnerships with teams like Symplicity. Catherine, you and your team have been the bright spot from
Aw.
everything that happened when I first came on board. I liken it to a dawning moment. You're walking through the darkness and you're trying to figure out exactly which direction you're going. And then you and I spoke, and I was like, okay, finally, there's a partnership here that's working and it's working well.
Thank you.
But we took that and through some relationships that I had garnered in previous life
Yeah.
and kind of redeveloping them, we were able to shift some of those partnerships over to, a new managed service provider. We spun up conversations with new infrastructure partnerships.
Yep.
And so we were able to really affect a lot of change very quickly. And luckily, we've made some very good decisions along the road and developed partnerships like what we do with Symplicity and strengthened those relationships and allowed some of the others to kind of wane away. And through that, we're doing what we call a technology leapfrog, where we are literally overnight changing the way that we do technology at Fresh Time. For the fiscal 24 year, our motto was, we're laying a new foundation for technology.
Mhm.
And we literally came in and rebuilt our entire infrastructure from the ground up, an entirely new tech stack for the business from almost every avenue. That's been a journey. We have stumbled along the way. I liken it to the two steps forward, one step back approach.
Yep.
And, my team has done a phenomenal job of making sure to just keep that momentum moving forward and get that traction that we're trying to get. I can say that we're finally getting there.
Oh,
It's one of those things we're starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel. We're starting to really see some change take effect and take hold in the business. So,
well, you're definitely making that impact. But, one of the things that I see working with a lot of companies, the word transformation gets used a lot, but I
mhm,
don't think some key positions don't really understand how they really have to transform. And I think you had to have a lot of courage in your role to truly do that. But I think that you have to purchase differently. People can't purchase the way they did 10 years ago, 15 years ago. A lot of times we would hear people say, I need 3 quotes, which that's important, especially when you're making a big investment. You need to know if your vendor is at the right price point. But I think when you're trying to evolve the IT department to the level that you have to approach it differently and have a plan.
yeah.
So tell me a little bit about how you found the courage and how you had those difficult conversations with leadership to say, you got to trust me.
I was very fortunate to work with an individual years ago. His name's Mark Haynes. He and we're still in touch today. He was the owner of a corporation in Joplin, Missouri named Choice Technology, and I was able to work with him. And one of the greatest lessons that he taught me was the words that go unsaid are the words that everybody needs to hear.
Mm,
And so from that opportunity, I started really developing my career under the principle of full transparency and speaking exactly where our challenges are, what the mitigations to those challenges might be, and to move quickly. When I came on board with Fresh Thyme, the technology department knew that we had some hurdles we had to get over. The business just needed to be brought into that conversation. And so we started having those conversations and being extraordinarily transparent, crystal clear about where we were and what the potential was, depending on which direction we moved. And I remember having a conversation where I was in the room with leadership and I said, the only wrong move is standing still.
mhm.
That is the only wrong move. And we learn by moving and by taking risks and associating the correct path. Luckily, again, I've been extremely fortunate, honestly, Catherine, in the last
Mhm.
couple of years because I've had leadership at this business who has instilled faith and trust and said, yes, we know that there's challenges here. We just need to know which direction to go. And so we started having conversations and started working through where those pain points are. And inside of technology, it's so rapidly paced that if you're not on the absolute cutting edge, you're behind.
Mhm.
And so we have to consistently look at what is the next generation technology and what is the next phase of security and application development, infrastructure stacks. And so I remember distinctly, I made a phone call to a partner that I had worked with through Butterball. And I said, hey, this is where I'm at. And I need you to bring in the entire team and let's go.
Mhm.
And Catherine, I think you and I had that exact same conversation where I said, this is a relationship that we need to foster. And I need you to bring your A game and let's go.
Yep.
And, with Dialpad, that's a perfect example of what we were able to do is
Mhm.
we're in the process of implementing an entirely new telephony stack.
Yep.
And Dialpad was the answer for us. It was,
Mhm.
and you came to us and said, here's 3 options. We have vetted these options. Here's your options. And we had a conversation and we made an educated decision and said, that's the direction we're going. And we
Yep.
went.
Yep.
We had to get to a point as a business where we didn't just, my dad used to say hem haw. We
Yeah.
don't hem haw around with the choices anymore. We
Yeah.
have to establish a direction. We have to choose and we have to go. Along the way, like I said, the 2 steps forward and 1 step back approach, along the way, we have found where there have been those challenges.
Yeah.
And you just have to accept it and you
Yeah.
have to talk about it and you have to be open about it. And I think one of the things that has been a massive change for this team is I'm the first one to raise my hand and say, "Yep, I messed up.
Yeah.
I made a mistake. You know, let's how do we fix it?"
Yeah. I
And
love that.
you have to own it. And if you don't own it, you're just going to sit and your wheels are going to spin.
Craig, I think I call them fail forward moments. When
Yep.
you feel like you've mm, gathered information and you made a decision, and then you get new information that shows you that wasn't the best decision. You can sit and cry about it and beat yourself up, but I like to look at it as an opportunity of, oh, dodged a bullet. What can I do now? It's going to lead me into that. And so I think fail forward moments, when you're changing so much and trying to make such an impact, are naturally going to happen. But as long as you learn from them, and I think your
Yes.
approach of transparency and what do we know now without blaming, it's more just, all right, what do we do? How do we fix it? Where do we go from here? And then when you get down the road and you look back and go, well, that was cool. I'm glad that that happened. It is nice because I think sometimes, there could be really egregious decisions that are made, but technology directors of IT are so challenged with how to keep the business running and operating safely, meaning everything's secure, while trying to be cutting edge. And I think that, there's just so many challenges that you can come up with when you're trying bleeding edge technologies or newer technologies. I love hearing that you do take those risks in terms of where do we need to go, and you do have that plan. And let's talk a little bit about a plan of, when you first came in going, okay, I see where we're at, I see the challenges. How did you put a plan together? Do you have any, suggestions for, people in the IT leadership that helped you as you reflect now, because you're 3 years in now?
Yep.
I think actually around this time, 3 years that you've been at Fresh Thyme. So there has to be some nuggets there that you've learned that you'd want to share.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to go back to a previous comment that you made about the leadership. There was a distinct change, and there was a moment actually on my very first day that I relive, I think about often. And my systems engineer, Carlton Mann, my very first day, I had everybody on my team meet me in the conference room at 8 a.m. Monday morning. And I walked in and introduced myself for the first time. And I said, guys, get ready. Things are going to happen. We are going to make changes. And I think the entire team looked at me like, you're crazy.
Yeah.
Like, okay, buddy, here we go. We'll
Yeah.
do whatever you want to do. And after we got done with the meeting, we all had lunch together. And then that afternoon, Carlton, and I love Carlton.
Yeah. He's pretty cool.
He's very consistent and very rolling. And he kind of sheepishly walked in my office and he goes, I kind of need to tell you something. I'm like, okay. He goes, we really haven't updated our servers in several years. And I'm like, okay, well, what do you mean by several years? And he goes, well, previous leadership just, and he's telling me the story. I looked at him and I said, Carlton, what's your recommendation? And he goes, we need to X, Y, and Z. And I said, okay, go do that. And he goes, well, what do you mean? I said, you're the systems engineer. You and I both know that this is what needs to happen. Go do that. And he goes, oh, that's the first time that anybody's ever said that. And
Wow.
I was like, moving forward to your actual question, that's the distinct difference in how you have to implement a change and
Hmm.
implement a plan is when you come into an organization, or even if you've been in an organization for a decade, the only way to move is to understand exactly where you stand.
Right.
And you have to open the books. You have to open the coffers and say, let's look at it. Let's see where our challenges are and not be scared of the results. Nobody's perfect.
Right.
We all live in this world of imperfection. And
Yeah.
so accept it. And then look at where you're at and then set your shining star.
Yeah.
That was another conversation that we had was who do we want to be?
Mm.
Where do we want to go? And then we literally put it on a whiteboard and wrote it down and circled it and said, okay, here we are today. There's where we want to be tomorrow. How do we get from here to there? And there's a I forget what movie it is, but I'm remembering a scene from a movie where they said, you just have to do the work.
Hmm.
You just have to do the work. And there's a point in time where you lay it all out, you write the documentation, and you go to your leadership and you say, and you have to own it. You have to say, this is where we are today. This is where we can go, and this is where we want to go. You lay it out for the leadership team to say, it's a long journey. We're all going to go down it together.
Yep.
And then you do the work. And when I say it like that, it sounds so simple. And there's 1,000 different things that go into that. But when you start developing a plan and when you start associating it, you just have to have the conversation to say with your team, we've just got to do the work.
Hmm. Yeah, I think what comes with that, Craig, is that you have to empower people. You can have,
Yes.
your role as a visionary set the tone. But what I just heard you tell Carlton on that first day was that you trust his abilities. If he thinks you need to do something, then now sometimes you have to still take that and get approvals because,
Right.
that's just the way it is. But, if you create the right business case and say, if we don't do this, this is what's going to happen, businesses, leadership will listen. But a key thing that I've witnessed for 3 years is you empowering your team to feel that they can come to you and say, I did something wrong, or this is what we need to do. We need to adjust priorities because I've learned something new and what we were going to do, we need to
Yep.
adjust. So empowering is a really important thing. And it sounds like that's what you were given when you started your role, is they empowered you to say, this guy's going to make an impact. So, you
Yep.
know, culture, especially in IT teams, has been really challenging through the pandemic and since the pandemic, because we've seen revolving doors of people
Yep.
coming and going and trying to increase salaries if I jump to another company. So let's talk a little bit about culture and how you keep people, and what do you do to foster that collaborative culture where they feel comfortable enough to come and say, I have an idea. Can you talk a
Yeah.
little bit to that?
Yeah, absolutely. You're completely correct. It is empowering your team to take the chance and to understand that you're not going to berate them if they
Hmm.
make the wrong choice. As long and this is something that I have instilled in this team from the very first day. As long as you are learning something, I'm not going to get upset. We all have to learn. And I've actually sat in meetings and had conversations where something broke, and it may have been as a result of something that we did, and it may have been as a result of something that somebody else did. But there's no reason to get on the meeting and get heated and yell and scream. Let's fix it. How do we
Hmm.
fix it? Where do we go from where we are today to the resolution? And what is the resolution? And building that, you know, you and I were involved in a opportunity just a few months after I came on board. And I went to my team and I remember getting the phone call, you know, immediately. And I'm not scared to say that I got the phone call and there was heat coming out of the phone as I was listening to this person say, well, this happened and that happened. And I said, okay, cool, not great. How do we fix it?
Yep.
And then, I told my team, look, we're going to be on the phone with these people, and we are not going to be the type of team that sets demands and, is heated and yells and screams. It's not the team that we're going to be. That doesn't solve problems.
Right.
The only way to solve problems is to just work through the challenges. And so I was fortunate enough, honestly, in those early days to have opportunities where I was able to
Hmm.
work with my team through those and say, there's no more yelling and screaming anymore.
Right.
We just work through it. And, the team has changed their characteristics over the last couple of years. It's been very interesting to see. And this is from a whole team perspective, we're elevating each other.
Mm.
And now when we get on phone calls and there's challenges that get brought up, other people on the team are saying, it's okay. We understand that the wrong button was clicked,
Yeah.
or, we chose the wrong direction. We understand that. Now, how do we get back on track and how do we move forward?
Yeah.
And it's building this team characteristic of acceptance and understanding,
Hmm.
but hard work and dedication at the
Right.
same time. And to your point, at the end of the day, the two things that I consistently tell my team is don't lie to me.
Right.
That's my biggest one is if you come to the table and there's a challenge, accept responsibility for it.
Yep.
Own it.
Hmm.
The second thing is move forward. Learn something from it. Don't repeat the mistake
Right.
and move forward. And by coming in here and having the conversations with leadership and other department heads and my team and everything else, it's having that opportunity to just level set. How do we fix? Let's move forward.
Yeah. It's just being supportive of your team
Yes.
because, life isn't perfect. Technology breaks, technology does weird, has little gremlins in there sometimes that do
Yep.
things, I swear. But,
Yep. The
but
ghost in the machine is
yeah,
real. And
yeah.
sometimes it gets scared of IT people. I used to laugh. You have people that they have challenges with their computers. They're the end user and something's not doing something right. And invariably, when the IT guy shows up, it's working perfectly.
Of course,
and I always just told
happens to
people
me.
it's the ghost in the machine. And sometimes the
Yeah,
ghosts are more scared of the IT people than they are of
yeah.
anybody else.
No kidding. It does happen. How do you feel like I was just on a call with Carlton earlier this week and he was in South Carolina. I said, Carlton, are you supposed to be on vacation and not on this call? And he said, no, no, I
Yep.
took vacation, but now I'm just working remote. So
Yep.
let's talk a little bit about remote and hybrid work. And has it affected your team? And have you seen ways that it's really helped your team?
So hybrid and remote work, as we're coming back into an age where people are coming back into the office, it's becoming a sticky conversation again. So here's what I like to say. Remote and hybrid work is great for some people and not great for others. And it depends on your position, it depends on your responsibilities. I am not a person that does well working remote. I'm just not.
Yeah.
I like to be in an office. I like to see people. Everybody laughs because I move my office around about once every 3 months and I change everything. And then they come in and they're like, well, why did you do this? I'm like, because now you're coming in my office and asking me why I did this. I
Yeah.
look at my windows and I see people walking by and I prefer to be in an office
Yeah.
setting. I get more done during
Uh-huh.
the day. But I have team members who work very well in a remote operation.
Hmm.
It really is down to the individual now. It depends on how your team dynamic works too.
Yeah.
My team dynamic, I have team members on my team who get together once a month and play card games and board games together.
Oh, very cool.
So they're friends outside of the office. They don't mind coming in here and sitting in the office together sometimes. But there's always that opportunity. And I tell my team consistently, to me, it's not about where you're sitting or the time of day that you're working. It's did you get the job done?
Hmm.
Did you get it done on time, under budget, in expectation? If we're doing that and we're operating as a gold standard technology team,
Hmm.
you can work from home, you can come in half the time, work half the time, you can work here full time, whatever suits you best so that you're getting the work done. That's the way that we need to do it. There's been talk about everybody has to be in the office all of the time. And I think that we were headed in the direction of a hybrid work environment prior to everything that happened in 2020. I think we were headed in that direction anyways. I
Hmm.
think that most people understand that high speed internet exists at homes. And so we can function. And some teams are very high functioning in a totally remote environment. So with us and with my team, I will say this, it's not that it's consistently in flux because we do have standards and we do have, an understanding of how work needs to get done and everything else.
Hmm.
But Carlton's a perfect example. If you need to work remotely, let's make sure that that happens because, and I may be skipping ahead here, it's my personal opinion that this is a job and we all have work to do and we all have to get it done, but your family matters more to me than the business does.
Yeah.
family is what matters to me. And that's what we need to be focused on. We are all here to feed mouths.
Right.
And while we need to do it in a way that makes us the most that we possibly can, and we like what we do, we have fun in our environment, at the end of the day, it's about our families. We're doing what we do because we're supporting our
Yeah.
families. And so I need, in my position, I always have the conversation with my team members to say, what do you need to best support your family? And then we move from there.
That's a
So,
huge part of your leadership style, I can tell, and I've seen it. And I think that you're absolutely right because there are some people that are terrible work from home people. They're just not
yep,
dedicated, they're not organized, and they really need to come into the office. And I think it's important for that person to realize don't ask to work remote
right,
if you can't pull it off. But there are sometimes things happen, and it is in the best interest of them to, if they're going to go down and, the companies only offer so much PTO. And
right,
so if they're going to be down there, take 1 week PTO, take another week that you can work from home. And it makes them show up as a better person to the job because they see how valuable, that company is for them. It's more than
right.
just the paycheck. It's the value of they trust me, they empower me, I can show up. So I think that, your leadership style from my observation is just being there to listen and making sure you understand their why. Like, why do you
Yep,
want to work here? What's important to you? And everybody's, success is different for each person. So I think
yes.
it's important as a leader to understand that.
Absolutely. Yeah. I have worked for leaders in the past where they lead from a broad spectrum and they have their expectation of what their day to day is. And they think that everybody else rolls up to that same expectation. And I have had leaders in the past who have those individual insights to say, this person needs something different. Person A needs something different than person B does. And having worked in those organizations and then worked for those leaders coming into this position, I really wanted to instill that with my team. And I've done that for quite some time in other teams that I've been a part of and had the opportunity to lead and everything else. You're absolutely right. You have to lead from that individual perspective. You have to understand where people are coming from you have to understand who they are before
Yeah.
you can make hard and fast decisions.
Yeah, most definitely. Working with vendors is a huge part of your role. So let's talk a little bit about maybe some of the things that you look for in a vendor. What sets a vendor apart from other vendors that make you want to have them as like you're a key vendor, a strategic vendor? Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah. Um, the biggest thing, I guess we could say, that I look for in a partnership is just that. You know, there's businesses out there that they go to a vendor and they think, I'm purchasing something from you and you're going to give me something in return. And it is just that. It's a very dry relationship. My opinion, and in the world that we live in today, it has to be a partnership. You have to you go through a dating cycle, you go through, the
Hmm.
proposal cycle, and then you're married to that company and you need to have that relationship. And it's going back to the very beginning of our conversation, it's being able to have those transparent conversations and say, this is where we're at. And Catherine, you and your team have been phenomenal at that, at
Mm.
building that relationship and being transparent and being open to, I come to you and say, I've got a problem. I don't know exactly the direction that we need to move. You circle the wagons, bring it in and say, okay, we can support you. We can be here. These are the things that we see, and this is the direction that we feel you need to move. And then it's our responsibility, just like we do with our team members, is to say, okay, I trust you. I trust that conversation. I trust that decision. Let's move forward. I think that's a lot of it. In the past, I've had relationships that are so transactional that it's difficult to get through those
Hmm.
sometimes.
Yeah.
But if you develop a relationship, you develop a transparent, trusting relationship with your partners, then they become just that. They're partners and not just vendors. You get to the point where, you have to keep them honest. And
Yeah, for sure.
everybody gets that, everybody understands that. And you're always open to new conversations and open to new relationships, but you have those trusted few that you hold close and hold dear. And those are the ones that you share your vision,
Yep.
you share your expectations with, and then you move forward.
Yep.
You bring them into the folds of your life as a business.
Yeah, definitely. And, I've seen relationships where, they've had a long relationship and, it's not necessarily a positive one. And I think that's the new IT leadership these days is willingness to do something different, purchase differently, not just keep using the same vendor. If that same vendor keeps earning and contributing and providing value, great. But make sure you're checking what else is out there
Yes.
because things are transforming and going in different directions. And you want to make sure that you weren't just complacent. You didn't have a complacent vendor just, counting their chickens, right?
Yes,
So,
exactly. Complacency is,
mhm.
not to be dramatic, but complacency is death in technology.
Yeah, yeah,
So
agreed. You bring a lot of energy and positivity to, when we're on meetings, you bring a lot of that positive energy. How do you make IT fun and engaging for your team? Do you have anything you want to share?
Nerf guns are always good. Most people into technology like Nerf guns. No, it's one of those things that when I started in the technology industry, the business world thought that technology was the guy that sat in the corner and he sat in front of a green screen and he coded all day long on the AS400. I can remember I was having a conversation years and years and years ago, and the guy looked at me and he goes, "You're not the typical tech guy." And I said,
Thank you.
I am the typical tech guy. Most people in technology want to have those conversations and they want to joke and they want
Mhm.
to have a light and lively environment. And I think the biggest part of it is from a leadership perspective is bringing the rest of the business along with that idea that we aren't the guys that sit in the closet and code anymore. We
Right.
are a vibrant part of the business and bringing them out of and into that light. It's having conversations with, with team members. As I walk down the hallway, I'll have somebody stop me and I'll have a conversation. And you can almost see it in their eyes. They're looking at you thinking, okay, like I can actually have a conversation with you. And then, you say, hey, why don't you talk to Stuart or Elizabeth, or
Mhm.
you need to engage with this person. But then it's also having the conversations with our team members inside of technology to say, walk down the hallway and have the conversation,
Right.
get out of your shell and you don't have to sit here and do that. I do bring a lot of energy. I try to make sure that people see us because the technology division of any organization, it's my personal opinion that they're the lifeblood of the organization.
Oh, yeah.
We are the reason why behind every single decision that gets made in business. Anything that happens in a business touches technology in some way. It's just the modern way.
Right.
And so we have to be out there. We have to be engaged. We have to understand the vision of the business leadership and the departments and the directions that they want to go. And we have to be consistently engaged. And the only way to do that is get up out of your chair and walk through the building and talk to people and to have the conversations. And that's, I think the team sees that.
Mhm.
And then we have fun too. We went bowling here last month
Yeah.
and, we get out of the office and we take breaks and we try to do the things that
Awesome.
bring a team together.
That's right. Team
So yeah.
building for sure. I think one of the things that I try to help my clients understand is that no matter what kind of company you are, Fresh Thyme is a retail chain, but they're a technology company. Every company is becoming a technology company. And technology isn't just a cost anymore, it can be a revenue producer. And I
Yep.
think that that's what I see in your story is that you're not just spending money and updating technology, you're getting it into an area where you're now going to make decisions based on the data that you see off these platforms that you're putting in there. And you want it to allow you to sell more products in your stores. And so
Mhm.
I think that that's a powerful opportunity for especially C levels when they look at their financials to go, there's an opportunity if we invest in the technology department to increase revenues. Do
Yep.
you agree with that statement?
I do. For a long time in most businesses, the technology department was a cost center
Mm-hmm.
and the technology department was a support center. And we're starting to flip that script a little bit.
Yeah.
And to your point, we are bringing a technological frame of mind to the decisions that the businesses are making. And we are presenting our customers and Fresh Thyme as a business, Fresh Thyme as a retail grocer has a very distinct characteristic.
Yeah.
And we are trying to maintain that as we move forward in the technological age, as we start to develop the next generation technology and we start to deploy that, we're trying to maintain that characteristic inside of our stores. And so, to your point, we are absolutely starting to become the technology leader and say, okay, the business wants to do A, B, and C. We know that we can do that with enhanced technology and we can drive innovation and we can collect the data and make intelligent decisions quicker. And so now, to your point, we become a revenue engine for the business. And we have to stay on that consistent edge. We talk a lot about technology debt
Mm-hmm.
and how far we've come and how far we still feel like we need to go. And we start to see the lines start to meet a little bit
Right.
on the P&L paperwork. That's been really exciting for me is to be able to be a part of that change inside of the business to say, okay, we're starting to actually make inroads here and we're starting step by step to get down that road. But no, technology is absolutely a revenue engine. I think that every decision that's made inside of any business in any vertical at some point has to bring in the conversation with technology. I tell my partners here at the business is if you wake up in bed at 2 o'clock in the morning and you have an idea, that's the time when you text Craig what your idea
That's
is.
right.
Like, bring me in early
Yeah.
because I would tell that to anybody in any business is if you think of something, the moment that you think about it is the time you need to go and approach your technology team.
Yeah.
Because I can almost guarantee you that your technology team is sitting there waiting for somebody to walk through the door and say, hey, I had this idea and I know it's crazy, but do you think that we could do this? And they're going to look at you and go, yes, we can. And this
Yeah.
is how we can do it.
Yeah.
And I think there's so many opportunities for businesses out there to grow and to achieve greatness through having that conversation with their technology team. I think it's an untapped potential in a lot of businesses.
No, I totally agree. And as we wrap up here, I can't believe our time is over already. But, Craig, I have loved watching you the last 3 years, getting to know you, watch your impact, see your team respond to you. And I think it's a lot of the nuggets that you provided in this conversation has been, people could stand up and listen to that, like C-levels to go, oh, I'm a technology company. I might sell whatever widget, but I'm a technology company. Look at your IT department through new eyes, through fresh eyes to say, what if I empowered them? What could they do? What impact could they make? And then what vendors are the strategic vendors that you might need to lean into a little bit more and leverage a little bit more and get that trust going. So I really appreciate you joining me today and sharing your story, and that IT departments probably have Nerf guns. So when you're walking through,
Yes, most of them do.
yeah,
Any
so
one of them that I've worked in probably has one. So
you might have been the driver there.
it might have been.
Awesome. Well, Craig, thank you so much for joining us from Chicago. And thank you, listeners, for listening to Symplicity Conversations. Be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and visit us at thesimplepodcast.com. You're going to connect and learn more from these inspiring leaders. See you soon.